And welcome back to another episode of Rival Stage. My name is Nick, and thank you for joining us again this week. Today we have something very special for you, a little treat, if you will. We have our good friend in the house, but before we talk about good friends, let's talk about great buddies who are happen to be on the road, and they're not on the actual studio presence of Rival Stage. Mr. Ryan Kogod. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm more excited that I got my buddy and teammate Will joining us today.
I
So pretty pumped.
I am super excited to bring William Anderson onto this because I've known William Anderson since I think literally 1951. We have playing universes together, I believe, through multiple different presidencies at this point here. So, without
Yes, sir.
further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Anderson, I'm giving you a little light applause here. Welcome in. Thank you.
Yeah,
Welcome,
thanks for
Will.
having me, guys. It's great to be here. Nice to talk to my friends and, talk a little shop on Universus, how it's going, a couple of the different things in the format that stand out, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have you here, Will, because you're one of the people I know who's kind of like pretty smart. You're extremely just a fantastic good player. You're a decent person outside of the game as well too. But I think I really really like about you is just kind of the decks you play, the deck designs you have, and just kind of the gameplay loops and kind of strategies that you bring to the table. So it's always been a treat to sit at any single tournament with you whatsoever and play across from you or just bump shoulders with you and talk about the game the entire time. And I'm a little jealous of Ryan, honestly, being on the same team as you and having full access to be able to talk about whatever and play all these cool decks and see all this cool stuff coming together with the brainstorm. So it's very very awesome to have you in here, William. For those who do not know you. Or are unaware of you, or I mean, they should be aware of you, but if they aren't, just what are some things that you kind of have a claim to fame for in universes?
If we go back a little bit, I played a lot in retro or what was then standard, and it had a lot of top cuts, including a third at Worlds in 2019, and then I won the standard tournament, the Standard Sunset as it was called, the Nationals 2022. So, reveal for that coming soon. TM. We'll see how that lands. And had a lot of top cuts since then. I've been to the last two World Championships as well, so you see me on coverage there.
So, Will, getting into the new stuff. Um, what are your thoughts on AOT 3 as we're getting into it? And are you going to Albuquerque as well? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'll be at Albuquerque and playing some fun stuff there. But as far as the AOT3 stuff goes, I think that there's some real potential in the characters, and also they're going to be pushing the four check tribal kind of like big stage, get a lot of advantage from having a bunch of cards in your hand to build out, check giant attacks. There's a couple of those that are really strong that I think will really impact the format.
Oh, I agree 100%. Speaking of like the forecheck stuff, give me your thoughts on the Infinity Unyielding card. Do you think that's my all my deck building has been revolving around that blitz? Everybody goes down the four foundations. Do you think that that's going to be a really big factor in a lot of these decks going forward?
I think I think it'll have places where decks that can't compete in the late game, they'll have a way to kind of slow down the game if their opponent gets too far ahead in foundation advantage and stage control. I think that'll be great for that. But like we had Searing Glacial Storm for a long time. I know it was a symbol locked enhance to blow up the board basically, but that didn't see very much play outside of very niche decks. So it's not
Also
a
a two
two.
check. Also a
Yeah, it
two
was a
check.
two check. It was a two check. That's true. But the function remained the same, where it would come out of sideboard sometimes, but it wasn't like a mainstay of most decks. I think unless someone tries really hard and is a good player that can develop the strategy to push it, as including in the main board, we won't see it a ton. But it's definitely something to think about when you're creating your sideboard for an event.
Yeah, a lot of my experience in like play testing with like the team and everybody with that I've played with is like if you're gonna build a four check deck, I feel like this card you have to think about it, right?
Yeah.
Playing such high difficulty attacks and then on a whim being able to go down the four foundations on your stage can be kind of devastating if you don't have a way to come back from it. Like if you draw a handful of attacks and they're all seven, eight, nine diffs, and you have four foundations, what are you gonna do?
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of like my big takeaway from the set and deck building is playing around that card. Do you have any other cards that you're really excited about or want to see?
I really like the new Armin because turning anything in your deck into a two diff foundation that you can just play, especially if you had minimum four checks in your deck, let's just say, is pretty crazy. He has stuff on symbol to pick up cards from stage, so it's basically kind of like how Overhaul played, but um, I don't know how strong it'll be until someone gets like that perfect list. And I also think you'll probably end up playing like 52 ofs, have a giant deck, and then sometimes you won't see the stuff that you need right away and you'll get stuck. But I think there's a huge potential there if someone can get it figured out.
Yeah, I think there's a potential, where the mimics are running zero foundations. This could be another package of that, right? In
Yeah,
terms of like assets or especially actions, right? Playing on the order symbol, how many good actions are there that you can play that at any whim can be a face down or a foundation?
right.
But the
Yeah,
unique part of it is you still need to have some sort of foundations for his first enhance to work right. So I think there's going to be that really delicate deck building balance that you mentioned. That I think it's going to really require you to have a tight list and a lot of games on it to really understand it.
right.
But I totally agree. I think the character has the potential to be absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, and I think once once you get kind of the gameplay loop down of that deck, it's going to be very clinical. I think it's how it'll end up kind of how Mitch did with the order list, where he just goes piercing, pick it up, piercing
Hmm.
ice wall again, your turn. Oh, you're
Hmm.
frozen out. Okay, my turn. Like things like that. Just to have like that on-demand control that you need to stay in the game for long enough to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and knowing yourself, at least as long as I've known you, you like to play a little bit more of a control play style. Go
Yeah, I
long.
love
Yeah.
control toolbox is probably my mainstay in this game.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll definitely be on him. I may or may not have four lists for him already. That's not a big deal. But yeah, him and Peak, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Being able to pull that asset from deck, plus one damage to everything, has options defensively and offensively all the time with their character ability. And I don't think the asset to target commit something is talked about enough, even though everything else is already so strong. So that definitely be one to watch out for in my book.
Yeah, that character on face says +2 -2 damage, +3 -3 speed. Get an asset that is also +1 damage and burn if you're a
Right.
Titan. And on top of that, the asset is if it deals damage, it's target commit, any foundation or asset.
Yeah,
All in just the character. Oh, and on
Right.
top
yeah.
of that has the death and the order attuned symbols. So it's
Yeah, those
even
are.
more crazy.
Oh, you can play Irwin's unique foundation.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like that at all, actually. Yeah,
It's like it's like the grossest pairing of power symbols you could put together, and then
yeah,
just jam in the toolbox with it as well too. I have
Yeah.
a question about you, or a question for you about the upcoming Attack on Titan Apocalypse set. For me, it's all been about one character. It is Falco Grice. How do you feel? How do you feel about Falco? Because I'm absolutely over the moon. I love the character's design. It's the first character I've seen in a long time where I'm actually like, oh, okay, that's what I want to play. That is 100% what I want to play. I don't want to play anything else. What are your thoughts on that character?
I think it's I think it's a well designed character. It feels like the character has like a game plan that they can follow throughout the entirety of the game and have it not just crap out at some point. So a lot of the Titan characters suffered from that, where it's like they transformed, did one turn, and then they kind of just sputtered out.
Hmm.
But Falco, I think, can just stay through the whole game. And I think it's also a character that the floor and the ceiling are both pretty close together
Hmm.
until you put in a lot of the deck building choices.
Hmm.
So I think that'll be the real way that you can separate yourself playing that character. But overall, I think it'll be strong and fairly straightforward for the most part.
When I
Awesome.
look at that character, the first thing that I see is, do I have a reset on board? If I don't, oh boy, am I in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
That's
That's
Yeah.
true.
it's a kind of blitzing strategy that I've always kind of played in my entire life and universes and UFS and stuff where it's just like I don't want to talk block or do anything else, but just beat your face off
Right.
pretty quickly too, if we can get to it. So yeah,
Right.
it looks amazing here. So this week, obviously, we had ourselves a ban and errata update here. And for those who aren't in the know, there's probably been a million videos for this about right now. The card vertical maneuvering equipment was banned, citing the reason as our players refined the decks utilizing VME, it became clear that stacking strong defensive abilities alongside VME created gameplay walls that are just unapproachable for many deck archetypes in our game. I think this is a great move because one, I didn't see it coming, and I love these kind of little refreshment things to the meta. But two, I think it's just kind of a lot of people got to play very not honest defense, if you
Yeah.
will, and now everybody kind of has to reassess everything from a starting point. And I personally like it when things like that happen in a game. Can I get your thoughts on this, man?
Yeah, I think that it helped some decks really kind of climb up to the like the A minus B plus area that normally wouldn't have been there. So that was cool. But on the top end, making those A plus decks and S decks like unapproachable with their defense if they chose to, just because if it'd be one thing if it always changed the zone to whatever you needed to, it'd be another thing if it always changed the speed to whatever you needed to. But the fact that it does both at the same time for a pretty easy resource to generate, and being that it's an asset too, it's harder to interact with most decks. You'd have to text specifically for that because all your answers would be foundation based. I think it's a long time coming to either get an errata or a ban. I could have seen an errata, but I'm fine with a ban too. We've been playing with that card for a long time. It kind of limits design space a little bit. Or if there's any character that kind of generates momentum too freely, it just becomes an auto include. Put it in at 4, even though I say multiples, I don't care. I can use the enhance twice.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the fact that it isn't a unique and that you can just begin building crazy amount of copies of it, and then it's also infinity, so it just goes everywhere.
Right, yeah.
As old UFS players, we know how infinity assets can get out of hand if they aren't unique and can do very incredibly good defensive things. So shout out
Yeah, you
old.
don't want to put. Yeah, you don't want like a place where you start up with every list like, okay, here's my 4 infinity cards I start with,
Mhm.
and now let's go
Yeah.
do all the rest of the cards for the deck.
All right, and 54 to go now. It's
Yeah.
just I think it's a bad place for the game.
No, and my biggest thing was when I first read this card when it came out in AOT1, I was so puzzled why it wasn't a AOT character only enhance. I thought that that would have really made it more acceptable, right? Because there's so many characters that just immediately were able to abuse it. People
Right,
forget. I mean, also it's a +1 mid block. It's crazy, and then also at random can give +2 damage for free when you need that extra two to go over the hump. So
right.
I'm happy it's gone. I think a lot of the meta characters, like especially Mitch and Tyrion, are going to be affected the most by this.
Mhm.
But overall, I think it's a healthy change for the game.
Yeah, and I think the people that really wanted the zone change component of it, they can actually go back and use the other options that we've had that have either been like they're one use or they're harder to get out, whatever it may be. But like giving those cards more value and have you make a deck building choice that matters of like, oh, I don't just throw in this really well statted infinity card. I have to choose, do I want to play Three Eyes of EA or do I want to play a different 3 diff? Like I like that game choice more than just throw in the asset.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Three Eyes EA, super cool card.
I'm trying to think of the Mirio card that came in the starter deck. It's a one diff that flips, gives your punch or slam +1 speed, and you change its zone.
Unrivaled Combatant.
Maybe, possibly, but I
It
loved
could
that
be.
card too, and that's a card that I think everybody, as soon as that Nationals was over, everybody just ignored that card for the remainder of time, and I absolutely love that card. I love cards that say, "Hey, guess what? I'm a one diff that changes a zone," because that can be insane if you have any type of read on what your opponent has in their hand.
Right.
Let's take a look at what they errataed, and that's going to be probably your favorite character in the game, unfortunately. Devil Jin. Devil Jin used to read enhance add one attack from your discard pile to your card pool, colon. Your attack gets +1 damage for each attack in your card pool. You may change this attack's zone to the zone of the added attack, it now reads enhance your turn. Add one attack from your discard pile to your card pool, colon. The remainder of the effect remains the same. Obviously, this is shutting out defensive ability, and this is a very obviously reaction to Aerial Goblin Bolt.
Yep.
How do you feel about Devil Jin basically losing all, or not losing all of it, but losing a great deal of defense right there in basically a few words?
Yeah, I would say he didn't really need to hit on defense that bad himself, but getting that easy of access to a universal cancel pretty much on Aerial Goblin Bolt, it was just too much. So I think he's kind of suffering for the sins of another card, unfortunately. But that's the new shiny one. That's the one that comes in a box that you can buy. So it's kind of tough on him.
Yeah, I agree. I was under the philosophy like, why errata the character when you can change the card? That's the actual problem. Same thing. It goes back to like Ryuku and vertical maneuvering equipment, right? That
Right.
was an unbearable face down. You know, when they had 7 momentum and 3 vertical maneuvering equipment, what do, right? And instead
Right.
of changing vertical maneuvering equipment at the time, they changed the character. And this is kind of the same thing, right? Is why not adjust Aerial Goblin Bolt versus adjusting the character? Even if it was just changing Aerial Goblin Bolt to be not affect a character in hands, I still
Yeah,
think it would
something
be
to
quite
it.
strong. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
but
I
I mean,
agree.
but Devil Jin will go back to where he was supposed to be the whole time, which was kind of a crazy off the wall aggro deck. There's like you can do some cool tricks with camouflage counter, but mainly it was just, hey, this one's for 20, my next one's for 21 at least, and I can get rewarded for checking bad or checking bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think I think it's overall a better state, but it kind of sucks that a character went from very little defense to no defense because of one card that got printed.
Yeah, it's Ryan and I were talking about this in preparation for this interview with you, and it's a shame because it does honestly feel like Aerial Goblin Bolt just needs to be changed, but it is the new shiny toy. It is the new card. It's a lot more with Devil Jin being a promo. Most people are only going to get it through redemption. So if you're a
Yep.
casual player and you just buy like a couple packs of cards because you like Critical Role, you have you. I mean, you could get something, and be like, oh great, cool, I got this card now, but now it's changed and all sorts of this and so on and so forth. Whereas all the people who have Devil Jin it's a significantly smaller group and they take it a little bit more serious in the first place already at this point. So I think it's a little bit, it's understandable in that regard, but also at the same time, I think it's just like completely kneecapping a character on a card that might be a problem later on still.
Yeah, I think it does have that weird echo of it can limit the design space of future characters. If they want to do anything cool that adds cards to the card pool, then they'd be like, well, not on these three symbols. If it's on one of these three symbols, that's not allowed. Then
right.
that's kind of sucks for them too, I think.
Uh,
But it's their choice to make, I guess.
they've been doing all right with it so far, but we'll see. My heart breaks for Devil Jin though, especially after having to play against it at playing against Ryan's Devil Jin for a little bit at our locals, and it was. I mean, it's impressive, but I've played through worse. Devil Jin was a lot of fun to just see the gameplay loop even and just see how cool all the interactions worked with. It was a very fun deck, and kind of
Yeah,
bummer.
yeah. It wasn't like a brain dead aggro by any means. There was definitely a lot of interaction and sequencing you could do
Hmm.
to like get the maximum output out of it and guessing on the zone changes and stuff like that. So hopefully he'll maintain that on the offensive side enough that some people still play him.
Hmm. It gave me very classic Universal Fighting System vibes when you'd play
Yeah.
them sometimes because it was just a lot of intricate moving pieces and parts, and you had to really think about very long-term lines every time you played a single card, knowing how many responses and what could be happening out there. So I do like decks that do that, that press a lot of buttons, but not for the sake of just pressing buttons. They do stuff because it's important and cool and it's
Right.
fun. So, um,
And one thing as well is like Devil Jin is banned in Rochester Retro, right? To me, if a character is banned in Rochester Retro and still legal and standard, it's like wee woo. Wait, there's a
yeah,
problem. This character might be really messed up if you
yeah,
can't play this in
yeah,
Retro.
I'll admit I was part of that problem. Because as
Yeah.
soon as I saw that character, I'm like, hey, he shares a symbol with time slow.
No.
So that says
Oh.
every enhance phase, your opponent gets breaker one, then breaker two, then breaker three for you literally playing a free enhance. So that's partially my fault, and that's my bad.
Why?
But
Why? Ugh. Just why? All right. Well, speaking of retro here, that's a great transition here. Uh, you have been, in my opinion, you're kind of the king of retro these days. You're a fantastic retro player, and I think that as somebody who doesn't play retro, I've been very, very honest with everyone. I will never play retro probably at this point. It looks like an amazingly fun format that I have no cards for. But it
right.
looks absolutely like a blast, and it looks like a lot of fun. For those of us who are kind of on the fence, like I am with retro, Ryan, you're not a very big retro guy, are you?
Never played a retro game in my life.
So you have both of us here who are clearly authorities on retro already, but pretend as if we didn't play retro or we didn't understand or anything like that. What are some key differences that makes retro as a format stand out from any of the formats we've had since My Hero One on it was released? I mean, is there anything immediately that stand out aside from keywords?
Aside from keywords, I think the general gameplay pattern is a little different. So like an aggro deck currently in standard is pretty consistent damage on everything, but in a lot of retro decks, it's leading up to a big attack at the end. So a common mistake or like gameplay difference that I see is people will block a bunch in the beginning of a string when they could have taken 4, 5, 6 damage, and then they'll get a hit at the end for 18, and then die because of it, and then be like, oh, what happened? And that's like something that's kind of different. Like Devilgen is one of the few characters in Standard that does it, kind of like the way Retro is statted on everything. So it's one thing to watch out for. Another big thing is reversal. So being able to play an attack during your opponent's turn and kind of interrupt what you were doing on your turn, or even if you're low health, they'll threaten to kill you if you don't block it. It's like breaker on steroids, basically. So, and a lot of decks, they'll kind of build around it. So you have to start to notice the pieces that people play to support a reversal game plan, like huge defensive actions that lead into an easy way to block and reversal and things like that. So that's one of the major things that kind of catch people off guard is you got to think about, well, what happens if my opponent were to reversal me right now? Am I in a place where I can withstand that, deal with it, whatever it may be?
One question for you, Will. Is reversal a response keyword?
Yes, it's response from hand, add to the card pool. You try to play it as an attack after the block.
So would like cards be like incredible display? Was that prevalent back in the day? Where there was a lot of
Oh
response
yeah.
cancels? Because I know what my limited experience is that there is a lot of cancels in general, like
Yep.
revoke, and there's a bunch of foundation stuff that's even more crazy. So I feel like there's a whole other layer of deck building on top of what you're doing to do your game plan to also stop whatever they're trying to do compared to the standard right now.
Yeah, so a lot of retro deck building goes into you got to go what can support my game plan, what can protect my game plan, and then what can stop my opponent's game plan. And then you kind of balance those three depending on how offensive or defensive you want to be. But a big thing to think about in retro is the fact that because there's more total cancels available, it's more likely that they'll have one. So it's putting all your eggs in one basket and just sending a powerful 5 attack for 50. Well, that's a lot of times that's going to get revoked or someone's going to cancel a keyword ability or whatever it may be. So having a methodical game plan that's a little more spread out in damage if you're playing against one of those decks is, or at least have the ability to do that, is a key thing in retro.
Yeah, like one thing I've noticed as well, like watching my locals play a lot of retro and you as well, is like momentum and like powerful. It's really, really underutilized because there are so many cancels, right? Such a powerful momentum cost is probably going to be canceled on the spot if they have it. So I feel like a lot of that deck building is kind of limited because they're not including that because they're knowing that they're going to get canceled if they do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people have been burned at one time. They're like, oh, I would have won the game if they didn't cancel that multiple or they didn't cancel
Right.
that powerful or whatever. So they're thinking like, well, I'll just play attacks that have high damage without the powerful instead and play around that cost instead of trying to play around what your opponent may or may not have. I think there's still a good place for it. It's just you have to have cards in mind to help protect you. Like Gore's Victory Pose is probably one of the best ones. Just say, hey, none of that this attack. I'm killing you. I'm sending it. I'm doing everything I want to do. Stuff like that. So it's just it gives you more to think about before you pay a big cost on playing an ability.
And hey, you mentioned it. Explain to me, as if I'm a dummy, what is multiple and how that would be in our game right now.
Sure. So it's kind of similar to Echo, but instead of playing the same exact card again, you add copies in, and then those are played afterwards. The main difference is it can go more than one in a row. So you kind of create an attack stack, is what they refer to it as. And it's a lot of game plans where it's like, I'll multiple a bunch of small attacks, but then give them each stats. So it's kind of like I played a bunch of big attacks.
Does
But
each
they still,
multiple, do you have an enhanced step during it so you can
yep.
modify? Oh, that's crazy.
Hmm.
So it seems crazy at first, but also remember that there'll be face down cards in your card pool. So if anything says return to printed speed, you got just desperate struggles in standard right now.
Yeah.
It says return to printed anything, it's zero.
Oh,
There,
that's good to know. Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's not the
yeah,
printed stats of the multiple card. It's actually just
yep.
zero.
Hmm.
Because it's a face down card, there's no stat, so it says that's looks like a zero to me, and
Yeah.
then full block it takes zero damage, whatever it is. So there's a lot of ways around it, and there's like things that you slowly add up in your knowledge database over playing games of retro. It'd be like, oh, this deck did this, I know how to fight against it. That deck did that, I know how to fight against it now. So
I guess the closest thing in standard is in Critical Role they released Bow, right? And that's like the closest thing to multiple, or at
yeah,
least the attack stack, right? At a
yep,
way higher cost of whatever multiple was.
yeah.
So I
That
guess you could see a little bit of it.
if multiple was always that costed, people might not have played it as much. But
Yeah.
It would not have been a problem as it
yeah,
became over time because I remember some very vicious multiple two even, not even crazy big numbers, just two, and it's just
yep,
like, well, you're dead. That's it. Goodbye. I got two momentum. Um,
yep,
so speaking of like kind of understanding like deck building and stuff like that. I I would have no idea who I would want to play in retro. For me, like the only character I can think of who comes to mind would be the Spike. I think who can play reversal cards or text or something like that, just because that card looked really cool. But
yeah,
otherwise, I Natali too. I heard she's kind of a menace. I remember playing
yeah.
her a long
She
time.
she she kind
Yeah.
of fits in a space where there weren't a ton of well statted giant attacks before, so
Hmm.
being able to play one for free wasn't too crazy.
Hmm.
But now there's all these Titan attacks, and you're like, well, I'll play a 10 diff for free, you know.
Not
It's
bad.
10 damage still gives me two momentum. I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
But so there's stuff like that. Some other characters that I think could be really easy to transition into. They have a pretty straightforward game plan. They say on their face pretty much, this is what you want to do. This is how you want to do it. Is I'd say Nightmare from Soul Calibur is a good option. He's like, if your stats are statted like this, you get a big reward. Your opponent will know that's the case, and they'll know which
Mhm.
attacks you probably will play. But you get the benefit of the other side of huge damage all the time. Be ready to go in with whatever attack you get. And another one is Akuma 2. So if you like playing like a Mina 2 or something like that, where you kind of manipulate your card pool and your opponent's card pool to get bonuses for it, and you kind of get ramping stats as you go, he's the perfect character for that. And I would say some honorable mentions from Standard or MHA on that kind of transfer back is the characters that follow a specific theme or theme of keywords. Like Jiro wants to deal with charges and weapons and things like that. So the bigger the card pool is, the more of those cards there's probably going to be. So looking at characters like Jiro and going back and be like, hey, what cool weapons or charges can I play from back in the day? Stuff like that is really good. So any cool character that you have, you're like, oh, I like Coda, but I don't think there's good enough ally attacks right now. But if you go back in retro, there's
Crazy.
crazy ally
Yeah,
attacks,
yeah.
so
Crazy.
many of them.
Yeah.
So
I just watched Stam play that on his webcam Wednesdays for retro, and it was disgusting what he was
yeah,
doing with that
yeah. If you go look up the card called Pea Shooter, and then you be like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
that shares a symbol with a guy that makes his stuff in carpool not count as progressive.
Oh,
Huh, that might be
Uh,
pretty good.
interesting. I remember I would at nationals 2 years ago. I remember I saw my good friend Stefan Enrique Jones, the man with three names, and he was playing this just insanity. I think it was Coffee Samba Iori
Ooh,
from
yeah,
f-
that's
Ooh.
Yeah, and yeah, he was just like just casually just showing me everything, and I was just like, oh my, oh Lord, this is just
Yeah,
gonna
if
be
you get to
out
do that,
there. Yeah,
yeah,
this is just gonna
stuff like
happen.
that.
Oh,
And that's another thing. It's as basically as high as you want your ceiling to be,
mm,
you can put your deck building cost that much higher and try and do it. That's
yeah,
an awesome thing. Like I played, if people know, Wrath of the Raging Demon
mm,
has very, very specific conditions. It checks a one, it's a high difficulty, but if you do it, it's unblockable 12 damage, and they can't do anything about it.
mm,
So people play decks like that. It's fun, like especially if you're I really want to do the thing and do it well type of player. There's always a
mm.
home for that in retro. So.
That's super. That's super cool, man. I really appreciate a little bit of insight on retro here, because it does make me want to play it just a little bit. I got to get my hands on some Street Fighter versus Darkstalker stuff before I really make that decision. But yeah, no, thank you for kind of the peek at to retro. Um, yeah, do you think? I mean, what do you think about the state of retro right now? Is it healthy? Are you enjoying it?
It's not too bad. I think the main issue is most people don't try to play like a true prison deck just because the card pool is so big that you can be like, well, I have 16 foundations on void that all say this attack doesn't do anything or
Hmm.
skip this attack's enhanced step. Is like people can choose to play a deck like that. It's just most people don't.
Hmm.
So I think there's that looming issue of eventually people will start to play decks like that. And I think that's like why Ken got suspended for a while is
Hmm.
because people were like, oh, he draws a bunch of cards, so I can just sit on a bunch of cards in my hand that all say, no, you don't get to do that until whenever he needs them, and then he'll kill you with his offensive output in the meantime. So I think that's something I'm not exactly sure what the full solution to that is, but um, that'd be one thing I would look at. Otherwise, there's 20 different varieties of aggro you can play, 20 different varieties of mid range you can play, and all of them can do pretty well as long as you try and figure out what's going on in the board state.
That's a.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
yeah, I was like, well, you heard it here first. If you sit across Will Anderson at Rochester Retro event, he's gonna throw you in jail and eat the key. So be ready for that.
Yeah, you're getting locked down, yoga mastery style. It's over, everyone. Well, Will, I want to thank you for joining us today. Ryan, this has been a lot of fun. This has been a great idea. Will, you have been a treat as always. I want to give you the stage here. The floor is yours. Will, go ahead and let everybody know what you're doing in the game, where you're playing it, so on and so forth, where we could see you, what's going on. Go ahead, my guy. The floor is yours.
Yeah, shout outs to my locals at Frost Giant Games. Huge support for me, get me ready for tournaments and everything. Just having a fun time. And also shout outs to Let's Talk UVS, team I play on. Shout outs to David Toombs for putting it all together, trying to keep us animals in line for the most part. And
Amen.
shout outs to you guys for having me on. It's been awesome.
I'm sure Ryan just has a big smile on his face for that. Well, thank you, William, very much here. So, Will, once again, my guy, thank you very much for coming on. You have yourself a fantastic rest of your evening, weekend, month, year, honestly, and good luck in Albuquerque.
Yep. Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks, Will, and thanks for everybody watching.